Alrighty, folks, I am about to say a sentence I never thought I would, but the one and only Dion says I should do it. So here we go. Cash flow is overrated. Yes, folks, you heard it here first. Dion has created 7 reasons why cash flow is overrated. And frankly, I am trying to not explode as I say those words. So we're going to let Dion run through his list one at a time, allowing Matt and I to reply. And I'm just hoping I don't have a stroke. So, Dion, you're up.
Well, at least everybody knows what my goal is in this video.
We always know.
I am making this video for my channel, Dion Talk Financial Freedom, with a lot more information and a lot less debate. But this is the idea for this video. And then I want to get this to as many people as possible, because if people don't understand at least some of these reasons why cash flow is overrated, they'll make bad decisions. That's the whole point of this, because I'm not saying cash flow isn't important. I'm saying it is overrated. Because if people are buying a rental thinking $300 a month is what's going to make them wealthy, they're actually staring at the smallest number on the screen. And so the first one I'll make on this list is cash flow is the smallest wealth builder in a good rental. So before you respond, I could say investors obsess over whether a property makes $200 or $400 a month. Meanwhile, a $300,000 property appreciating 3% adds $9,000 in value. It doesn't mean appreciation is guaranteed, but it shows why focusing exclusively on small cash flow misses most of the picture.
Yeah, so I mean, again, I'll go first here, and Matt, throw it to you, and maybe we'll go vice versa. So you'll go first on the next one. This is completely accurate. Cash flow is, or let's at least hope it is, the smallest number, because again, there's all these different ways you can make money with real estate: appreciation, debt pay down, taxes, all of those things. But I would be remiss if we don't remind folks that you have to have it. You have to have that $300, because if you don't, then you have an alligator and you're one fart away from losing the property. So the thing that makes me nervous about this first one is not acknowledging that it is the smallest, because you're absolutely right, but it is paramount that you have it, because to your point, appreciation doesn't always happen. Sometimes it goes the wrong way. So again, I think it's intellectually stimulating to highlight it as the smallest, but that doesn't mean it's the least important. Matt?
I would say it's the most important. So it's the smallest number, but it's the most important thing, because you can't, and it's the one thing that you can single-handedly control. You can't control depreciation. You can control income. You can control revenue from, largely speaking, you can control revenue. And I've never met an investor that was still an investor after 5 years that wasn't making money on cash flow. Have to kind of thing. But I do agree, it's the smallest dollar amount starting out, but it's still the most important thing, because it's kind of like blood in your body. If your heart's not getting it and your brain's not getting it, you're done. You're cooked.
Okay. So. Yep. All right. Number 2, Matt, you'll go first on this one.
Okay. Dion.
Okay. So I thought Matt was going to give a reason. I was like, oh, that's new.
I'm not.
No, so, I'm sorry. Responding.
This is where people can make a bad decision, and why it's frustrating when people, the reason for this video, the frustrating reason is, what is the most common question that we get when somebody says, is this a good deal? It's, is the return good enough?
Yeah.
I've never had that. Is this a good deal? It's got good parking. It's got washer dryer hookups. It's in a safe neighborhood. I've never heard that other list. So this is one that's not mentioned in that list enough. But one of the fears of going for cash flow is that it makes inflation our best friend, because we didn't pursue just cash flow. Because the highest cash flow, not the best yield, but the highest cash flow is only to purchase with all cash. If you have debt, you reduce your cash flow and increase your yield in most scenarios.
Sure.
Which makes inflation not as much your friend, because an asset that appreciates basically with the speed of inflation keeps up with it. But an asset with debt on it multiplies what inflation does to your gains. So the second reason is, if people are pursuing just cash flow, they'll make a bad decision of either buying cash or focusing everything they can on paying off debt, and missing out on all of the benefits that inflation give us because we didn't pursue just cash flow.
Yeah. So the best investments ever, and this is why the suckers and poor is not the best investment, is because that is a 9% average return. And there are years where it was down 18% like 4 years ago. And then there's years where it's up 25 and 22. And that's all wonderful and happy and good. But your average return is about 9.5% on the sucker and poor. And so if you look at real estate, it's leverage. Leverage is the key. Leverage is what gets me to an 18% return. And for those out there who don't understand the concept of compound interest, do 18 plus 18 plus 18 plus 18. And then you can do 9.5 plus 9.5 plus 9.5 plus 9.5. And then you can wonder why you're still working in your 40s. It's because I'm better at math than you. So that's why we do it. So when I look at that, I say leverage is the key to powerful investment, because everybody needs to understand that it's not just Dion, you and I have talked about this a number of times, right? If you want some of your greatest margin returns, they are on Martin Luther King Drive in every major city. You just can't collect your rent unless you're packing and wearing a flak jacket, and have 3 of your closest friends pulling up on your 6. So from my perspective, Dion's absolutely right in this regard, which is everything must be accounted for and taken into consideration. But leveraged debt is the greatest wealth creator, not just pure income.
Yeah. So I love all of this. Again, the one of the things I'm sensitive to, having helped thousands of people, is not everybody is comfortable with leverage. Sometimes you got to know thyself. Maybe you've been baptized by Dave Ramsey, and you're not going to own it free and clear, but you only take 50% leverage, right? That's all you'll do. And I would argue, well, if that's all you're going to do, you still got to get started, right? So some of this is you have to know thyself, because again, Dion, you're a veteran. Thank you for your service. You can get a 0% down loan, right? That's one of your God-given gifts because you served. Matt and I can't do that, right? The best we could do is 3.5 or maybe a 203K loan or something else. But yeah, leverage is extremely powerful. It's safe leverage, i.e. you got to have cash flow. Got back to point 1. But yeah, that's the name of the game. All right. What do you got for number 3?
So many people focus on cash flow and they don't realize that where does most people's wealth come from? And let's look at non-investors, because not everybody's a very small percentage of people are investors. But the average person that's living paycheck to paycheck, when they reach retirement age, their wealth is tied up in 2 places. If they were smart enough to buy a house, they have some home equity.
Yep.
But most people, their wealth comes from an account that grows without them actively contributing to it. Their 401k, their Roth, their paycheck automatic deductions, right? So in real estate, we have something very similar. Again, this is not one of the biggest numbers, but this one matters over time too. But every single month, tenants pay off a part of our debt. This amortization grows over time. When we first take out a mortgage for $300,000 or $400,000, we're probably putting $300 to $350 a month into an account, basically paying down the principal. But by year 5 to 10, that starts being $700, $1,000 per mortgage per month getting put in there. I have almost $4,000 a month being put into an account that I never see. And it's because we never see it. Now, here's the problem with cash flow. You get a rental, it's making $200 a month. That brand new investor, I've earned it. I deserve the trip, the meal, the truck, the whatever. We don't see the amortization happening. And all of a sudden, even though I've never touched it, there's millions in an account that my kids are going to inherit instead of a parent that they have to take care of when I'm too old to work. Yeah. So cash flow is important, but amortization is a factor as well.
Well, what I would tell you kind of on this ilk is amortization as an investor is almost never thought about. It's not even an afterthought. It's just like I've never heard an investor, talk about it. But I believe for most people owning a home, and again, if you own rental properties, that counts as well. That is the greatest wealth builder. Is you're chunking off hundreds of dollars in the beginning and ultimately thousands of dollars at the end. It's just a forced savings account. Most people suck at money, and thus having a forced savings account, you're calling amortization correctly so, but I just call it a forced savings account. That's why my mom was able to do what she did is she bought a house in, Sunnyvale, California for almost nothing in the 70s and sold it for 7 figures. And I don't know when that was, 2000s or something. And she's good to go. It's because she had a forced savings account. So, I think that's an important discussion. Matt?
Yeah, I think the only time that I get nervous is when people start looking at it as part of the return on the deal.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. And the reason that you don't do that is because it's not accessible. It's not accessible. And so it's very important to remain disciplined when figuring out the return on capital on a deal. It's very important to remain disciplined and only actually count the things that you're actually getting returned, that you can actually spend and put liquid in. Equity you cannot spend. I know. I've tried to go to the store many times. I said, but you don't understand. I've got 10% equity. I'd like to give you a fraction of that percentage. And they're like, sir, we don't know what the hell you're talking about. Well, you just need to do better math.
Yeah.
So that's why it doesn't work. So don't use that to account for the job or to account for the deal. However, you can model it out to look and see what 5 years and 10 years looks like, because I always like to know what's my real accelerator in this deal. And a lot of times it's around year 9, 10, 11, unless I took 15 or 20 year debt, and then it's like year 6 or 7. Yeah. And sometimes that works. So that's one of the things. Just make sure you're not accounting for that natural savings account in your math.
Yeah. So just said it a different way. If you bring me a cash flow statement and it includes debt pay down, I'm going to slap you. I'm going to karate chop you in the throat because that doesn't work. Don't do that. All right. Go, number 4, Dion.
All right, the number 4, and this is one where we're going to remove the hypothetical.
Uh-oh.
We're not going to do projections. We're not going to do what ifs.
Okay.
We're going to go, what the F actually happened. Equity growth can dwarf cash flow.
Yes.
Now, this is not when you buy a place.
It should. How about this? It should dwarf cash flow.
23 and 22 years of investing, 13 years of investing and owning rental properties, right? In those years, what's been more? Cash flow, appreciation, principal pay down. I mean, all of these things. You might have to do the math to figure out at your scale what's been more cash flow, profit, or appreciation. For me, it was pretty appreciation.
Oh, no, there's no question. It's appreciation. Okay. There's no question. I mean, it's not even close.
I've got some where it's unique, but I've got some that are cash flow. It's unique though. It's unique.
So when you look at the summary of your portfolio.
Yeah. So the summary, it's obviously appreciation.
Yeah, of course.
But you will find. So here's an example: $200,000 for this, for this duplex, $200,000 for this duplex, and to call it $250 when it was all fixed up. It was $250 when it was all fixed up. And when we first moved in there, we were basically living for free, but it was such a great deal that now that place does about $6,500 a month in rent on a $2,200 mortgage.
Okay.
So that thing does $4,300 a month,
right,
like breaking sticks. So now that thing literally makes $50,000 a year. Jeez. Well, I've owned that property for 15 years now.
Got it. Okay.
So now we're at the point where, with what the income is on that, now it absolutely dwarfs because it's appreciated and it's worth probably $650 or $700, but it's not worth it's. But it's done now $700,000, $800,000, $900,000.
Okay.
Worth of actual income off of cash flow.
Yeah,
but that only comes down the line.
Yeah, I don't think.
And that usually only comes with multifamily too.
Yeah, I don't think I have a single asset that's that. I mean, if I were to look at across our portfolio, I would argue that somewhere between 85 and 88% of everything has been appreciation. But again, cash flow is what allowed me to survive the bad days.
Of course. But do you think that that's the case because a lot of single family assets, because they don't make as much, they appreciate?
I think a lot of it's because of California dirt. I think California is in hindsight, it didn't know it at the time, a very much an appreciation oriented market.
Very much so. Why do we start talking about Gavin Newsom dirt? I don't understand. Okay.
Yeah. How'd that happen? Stop it. All right, go ahead, Dan. You got 2 more. I think we got 5 or 6 minutes.
Okay. So great cash flow. The reason it's overrated is because great cash flow isn't an indicator to buy a property. It's a warning sign.
Yeah, can be.
Right. So a house showing spectacular return isn't automatically a spectacular investment. And Matt, you touched on this earlier. It can make you buy off the MLK, the word, whatever the area is in your market that's a bad area. It's McKinley Avenue in Tacoma. It's 301 T Street in Tumwater, Washington. It's like, I know my markets that well. I guarantee the return on those is 15% when I struggle to find an 8% there.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, that you know, that's, you're calling it cash flow here. To me, it's the 1% rule. Does the same thing. It just leads you to the wrong part of town.
Correct.
Yeah. All right, we all agree on that one. Give us the final one. What's number 7?
Okay, the last one, and this is the most important to me, is that chasing maximum cash flow can make you buy a worse asset.
Yeah.
Whenever I get the question sent to me of is this the right math, I'll go, where are they going to park? Is there enough storage for the people there? Can you go there safely without a flak vest? Can the police go there?
Can your wife go there? That was always my
wife. That's a great one. Yeah.
Yeah. Can my wife go pick up the rent? Yeah.
So you nailed it, Zuber. The real purpose of cash flow isn't to determine if a deal is worth it or not. It's to survive.
Correct.
Right? The strongest point is cash flow helps us survive while all that other stuff happens.
In the background. Exactly.
In the background.
Yeah. Guys, you guys are amazing. I appreciate all you do. Dion, where can they find you?
You can find me in school, SKOOL, at Dion Talk Financial Freedom, where I go live every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific and here on YouTube at 4 p.m. Pacific. But in YouTube, I cover the things that I can. In school, I cover the things I can't do on YouTube.
And there's a long list of what you can't do on YouTube.
It's true. It's true. Getting longer.
There you go. Matt, where can they find you?
Lumberjack Landlord, 9 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday nights. We'll be back tomorrow and then for the foreseeable future.
Oh, guys, you're amazing. Take care of yourself. Thanks again.
Thanks, boys.